Welcome to the Throttle Up podcast, a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to build and launch a new class of rocket propulsion. Hosted by Sascha Deri, founder and CEO of bluShift Aerospace, and storyteller and entrepreneur Justin Starbird. This podcast follows the real work behind the mission. From early design and propulsion development to testing, capital, partnerships, and the path to launch, each episode brings you inside the process as it unfolds. This is your front row seat to watching bluShift Aerospace take off.
Welcome back to the Throttle Up podcast. My name is Justin Starbird, and I get to welcome my co-host. And at this point, I mean, Sascha, you and I get to hang out a lot. This is
true.
Great. Sascha Deri, CEO, founder of bluShift Aerospace. Thanks for being with me today.
Oh, I love it. It's great. Beautiful day here today, too.
Last time we talked, we were announcing the next hot test of the motor, which we're going to be doing on July 16th. And you're at the test site right now.
Yep. At the test site, and Sam and Ben, we're just testing out some revisions to our igniter doing some tests. We've kind of gone from very quickly from some hard ignition tests, get the hard pop sound, to a nice purr, which is exactly which one. You want to purr everywhere. You want the big motor to purr, you want the igniter to purr. Basically a big metal cat.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's right.
Yeah.
That's great. It's so wonderful to hear that there all these milestones, these mini milestones that go into the test and eventually launch, are continuing to be met. It's such a refreshing to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you're starting to get excited?
Yes. This is good. This is we're putting out the invitation to folks who have invested us in the past, from the public. We'll even have some Girl Scouts here who just recently will have launched some SG's rockets. So it's really the complete community. And I'm really, and some VIPs too, some local and politicians and the like. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah. There has been a lot in the news recently about, not just what we're putting out there, which is this test that's coming up, but I believe we may have been overshadowed in the last week and a half by another company that has recently launched their IPO. SpaceX has completed the largest IPO in recent history, if not ever, and recently launching 75 billion in initial capital. I think it went up to 85 billion as they exercised additional options. It's debuting on the NASDAQ with a $1.8 trillion market cap, and quickly crossed over into 2 billion. And for the first time, public markets are available, or it's available to public markets instead of being behind the scenes or through a VC or private equity groups. And even maybe flying a little bit under the radar, the IPO also generated enormous retail investor elements, and some of the community that had been watching it so closely. That's put a huge spotlight on the industry. What does that, what was your initial reaction as somebody that's, adjacent to this?
Yeah, I think my initial reaction and sort of the ongoing reaction have changed. There's no way to. I've been at a number of aerospace and defense tech conferences just in the last 3 weeks, and I think if you look at it overall, it is truly like a watershed moment. This is a moment in time when a lot of venture money and private capital, they finally got to see their exit abilities. They got to see some very large exits, or they will be seeing some large exits. And I think, there's two sides to that coin. And one of the big sides of that coin is it provides the ability for capital to reinvest into this industry. And I think this industry, perhaps right until this moment, though you could say still with like the Firefly IPO, there's a couple other IPOs in this industry. But there's no doubt with the SpaceX IPO, it's demonstrating that space, which is, traditionally, of course, been like government funded and billionaire funded. There's no exception in this case. And it's, SpaceX has been locked up in the private markets until just, several days ago. And so this is really an indication to the private market, to the retail investor, that aerospace is not just a government thing. It's not just science fiction. It's literally building the sort of the new next generation of infrastructure, space infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I guess, maybe my third reaction is that it's shining a light on part of a really important growing part of the economy that still needs to be fundamentally built, like especially rocket propulsion, manufacturing capacity, and of course, this responsive launch capability that SpaceX and others are working on. So it really is sort of a turning point for their IPO. Is really a turning point for aerospace investing. And I think it helps people understand that the aerospace industry is it's not just one company. It's not just SpaceX. It's not just Firefly. Uh, it's it's not just one rocket or just one particularly unusual billionaire. It's really becoming a new industrial ecosystem, and so that's what we're focused on. And we're focused currently on one of the more painful parts of that ecosystem, and that's how do you make rocket propulsion, faster, the manufacturing of it faster, that is, and how do you store it more safely, indefinitely, make it cost less upfront, so you don't have to build magnificently large machines to even come close to getting your ROI back on any sort of launch. How do we support defense and the ability for truly, responsive aerospace needs on the defense and the commercial side?
Yeah. When you thought about this, did you think, or when you heard about this, I mean, it's been in the works for, at this point, months, if not years, right? To get to this moment. So everybody's had some sort of reaction. Has it been a net positive for the new eyeballs that are on the space? Because right now, for all intents and purposes, AI to some degree or another is propping up the economy, or it's propping up
Yeah.
the market, or it's out there and people are talking about it. But SpaceX is, I know they're positioning themselves as an AI company, but they're truly hard tech. It's something, tangible. It's something that is going to take years for a return on the investment. I think it's still losing something like $5 to $10 billion a year in terms
Yeah.
of operating costs. That said, though, what does it say about the industry and the eyeballs that puts on it?
Yeah, you're actually kind of alluding to what was part of my first reaction, which is that the valuation was not on the the aerospace company that is losing, billions of dollars every year. Um, and it's not about the broadband services company that's earning billions of dollars per year. Yeah, still found it odd that, and this is, I'm not an expert in anything IPO. I'm certainly not an expert in valuations of companies, especially in the AI space. But the fact that, this was leveraged against an AI play seems odd to me. And, call me old school in this fashion, but I think that companies should be valued on positive cash flow, how fast they get to not only revenue generation, but net positive revenue generation, as in, profitability. And it is hard. It is very hard in a capital intensive industry. And certainly SpaceX is pushing the capital intensity to its absolute max, maybe more so than any other company in the history of the planet have ever done that, for some really phenomenal gains. And a lot of them have yet to be fully realized. So, but it still goes without saying that now I think people understand this is an investable industry. And now maybe some of the eyes will be on, well, if we go one level deeper, what's solving more problems in this industry, in the aerospace industry, and who's doing it in a creative, unusual way that has wider margins and a pathway to actual profitability. Maybe it's not the, couple $1 trillion valuation level, but and I think that's kind of what we're solving. So yeah, I might have lost the sense of your original question, but it does speak to what was really truly my, initial reaction to that.
I don't think you're off base at all. I think that stayed true to the question about, and a follow-up to your initial thoughts, ideas, and I think we all are like, holy smokes, that is wild because, to a degree, SpaceX has also grown up in public in a way that very few companies probably would be able to have withstood. That said, what bluShift is doing is not attempting to be the next SpaceX. I think when Uber got successful or Airbnb got successful, a lot of people started trying to equate what they were doing as the Airbnb of some industry or the next Tesla of some industry, and that's just not what bluShift's ethos are. You're
No,
you're really working hard to stay true to what you're solving, and the benefit of the SpaceX IPO is that it just puts more eyeballs and attention on the space and shows people that there is investable options out there if they didn't get involved with something like SpaceX.
yeah, yep, in the space. Yeah, we are not trying to become a mini SpaceX, and we are not trying to take the same path. We're trying to we're working on making rocket propulsion more manufacturable and inherently more affordable. And as I mentioned before, easier to store, safer to store for long periods of time, even with propellants. Easy to transport. You don't need giant LOX trucks pulling up or a giant LOX factory by your launch uh, facilities. And when we compare ourselves to solid rocket manufacturers, we are very conscientious of how do we do this in a way that's less constrained by all the supply chain issues that solid rocket manufacturers have to date.
Right.
So that's what we are. And many times when I talk to investors, I often start with that. Like, we are not SpaceX. Even though, yes, rocket, and the first thing everybody thinks is SpaceX. Uh, this industry is a very large industry, and there are a lot of problems and hard problems to be solved. And we're focused on one of them.
Yeah. So speaking of those hard problems and challenges that you're always working to overcome, many aerospace companies generally tend to stay private for a long time or as long as possible. Do you think that this IPO for SpaceX, which also remained private for over a decade, yeah, it will allow people to follow that path? I mean, will it, is that a good goal for aerospace companies now is to get to an IPO?
I think an IPO is well, again, SpaceX opened the doorway for that, right? Which is great. And I think that allowing the public to invest in space should be a hot topic. I think maybe where I disagree is that it shouldn't be just at the IPO level. It shouldn't be just when, that curve of growth and valuation is about to peter out, or it's just now it's hitting like a slower slope. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I, I've I've always believed that, aerospace shouldn't be just funded by the billionaires. That is definitely what we were familiar with. It shouldn't be funded by large government institutions or folks that have been around as government insiders, primes. Um, there are investors and the public and folks who are inherently deeply care about U.S. aerospace, national security, uh, being climate sensitive, conscious, um, and they want to see regional manufacturing in aerospace to be a thing and to be part of building a strong community, uh, a strong industrial base, and not in just a few zip codes, just not in the a few zip codes that we're all familiar with that usually are based out of either Hawthorne, El Segundo, or the Texas area.
Yeah.
And so when what's exciting is that, regulations when it comes to investing aren't just, it doesn't allow public investment just at IPO level. There's other mediums which we did early on. That was our early stages was, early on we did crowdfunding after we had launched Stardust and made record as the first company in the world to commercially launch a rocket using a non-toxic bio-derived fuel that happened to perform better than the petroleum version of it. And so that's cool. I think that's really powerful. And I think speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah. And you're right. It does drive a lot of awareness, and it puts more eyeballs in the industry. I think it also shows the maturity that SpaceX went through in terms of now there's thousands of employees, billions in revenue, and yes, the caveat is still a loss. They also have a global footprint, but should investors think about that difference between investing in an established leader like SpaceX is clearly at this point versus an earlier stage company through a mechanism like your crowdfunding campaign previous?
Yeah, like the one we did in 22, 21, and 23. Yeah, there's no doubt these are completely different risk profiles. So like SpaceX is obviously now massive, the most massive public company with very significant revenue, while it's still net negative. And the scale is I guess giga, mega, insert your word for very large. Terra, Petra, I don't know. And they have that infrastructure, they have that capability. So an earlier stage company is not that. So we inherently have, and as all other startups, there's more execution risk. There's the technology risk, which we're getting very close to, honing down on. There's the financing risk, and of course, there's the fluctuations of what customers want, the market risk. But early stage companies can also be where a lot of innovation, like with us, happens well before it's obvious to the public markets, like in the form of an IPO. So the real question isn't, is bluShift SpaceX, right? No. It really should be, is bluShift solving a real painful problem in a steadily growing market, and can this team, some of the guys you can see behind me, can we execute? And that's what the question really should be.
I mean, and you continue to answer that with a resounding yes over and over. And I think that's really exciting as well, because you do have this next hot fire test coming up in July. And that's an opportunity to prove to the team, your customers, and also previous investors that this is a viable option. And I think that's a lot to be proud of too.
It really is, yeah. And what we have done is, I've said this in other settings. We have done with capital what other companies have not been able to do in the Southwest and the West Coast with 10 times as much. And we're very proud of that. I think that it speaks to our choices of how do we execute with available capital? How are we wise with whether it's contracts or private capital investment, or in some cases state capital is invested in us. How do we use that in the wisest, most productive way that moves us forward? And I'm very proud of this team. That's kind of part of our ethos. It's sort of I guess I would say sort of the Yankee spirit of how to get her done.
There you go.
I'm real proud of it.
The main spirit is
The main spirit, yeah.
Well, it's what we've talked about. So, all right, well, it caught a couple more things, but and then I think it is interesting because at this point, as CEO of a rocket propulsion company, you're gonna get these questions about SpaceX all the time because people only see what they see on TV or what they know, and I think it's really interesting to be able to have the opportunity to have this platform to be able to talk about it. And I think you've made this point before that by SpaceX being as public as they are, both now in the market, but also just out there the way they have, that this could actually become a catalyst for more investment into this industry, where it becomes a situation almost like a rising tide lifts all boats. I don't know what the proper rocket and synonym would be in
A
terms of.
rising rocket lifts all payloads. I don't
Yeah, rising. There you go. A rising rocket lifts all payloads.
know.
Do you really see that as the opportunity here?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen this in a lot of other industrial waves, right? And some of the ones in the recent past. Kind of bring it back to a certain guy. Tesla was also the one, the more than any one company, EV company, um, was the one to really make people look beyond traditional combustion cars and start considering, oh, hey, okay, there's EVs, but oh wait, there's also like batteries. There's the electronics for the DC to DC conversion, the charging. Oh gosh, we got to think about minerals and like where do we get, the mining required for that. We need to develop, high power transistors that can push, hundreds of amps, if not like thousands of amps at once. So, and then like, NVIDIA, of course, the big hardware play, and that made people, you know, that in many ways spawned, yes, they worked on chips, but also spawned the data centers. And now it's thinking about how do we do power? How do we do, is it nuclear? Is it solar? How do we create low cost power for these data centers? Um, and of course, all that is fostered in terms of AI. So, I believe that this, SpaceX has kind of done effectively the same thing for space. So, they've made space, inherently investable, which is great. So, meanwhile, bluShift is trying to make rocket propulsion more manufacturable. And so, what we're seeing is like in every industrial wave, it's the flagship company, in this case, SpaceX, that gets the headlines. But then the supply chain, the components, the tools, and all the enabling technologies are often what create the next wave of opportunity once that flagship company has gone ahead. And that's so, yeah, I think so. I think that this is opening a catalyst for a whole slew of companies in the aerospace industry.
Yeah. So if somebody is watching this episode of you and I, so engagingly discussing, the merits of the IPO and what it's done, what do you think they should understand about bluShift specifically, and where the company and your hopes for the company are over the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we compare it again to SpaceX, right? So the question was at that time, could a private company even build something that's significant and has value to investors and to the public, to markets, and compete with all those legacy launch providers. And so, we saw that this has clearly been answered right now. Now SpaceX firmly owns, very large launch. And so I think when you look at us and where we're going, the stage we're at, I think the questions to ask yourself is what are the new questions to ask yourself? And that's, can we launch? Can we test faster? Can we build it faster? Can we build it more affordably? Does everything have to be scaled to exotic brand levels? Or what are the market needs for propulsion that's cost effective and not on the millions of pounds of thrust level? And so in the case of bluShift, part of the problems that we're solving is how to reduce dependency on the solid rocket motor supply chain, which is really in crisis right now. And can we support hypersonic testing with a propulsion system that's one quarter the cost of solid rocket motors, that's reusable, that doesn't have all the environmental challenges you might otherwise have with solid rocket motors, And can we provide an adequate solution to responsive defense? And yes, maybe someday, eventually, uh, some orbital play. Maybe it's not on launch side, but maybe on orbit, and provide an option that's truly, more flexible, doesn't require cryogenics, doesn't require toxic materials, easy to handle, and phenomenally lower cost to manufacture, even at a much smaller scale. So yeah, we are not trying to, at bluShift, we are not trying to replay like the 2002 SpaceX movie. We're building for the 2026 market and problem set, and truly, really for the 2031 that's to come.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and insight on this topic. I know it is everywhere right now, and it is such a important topic in this industry. And I think you hit the nail on the head in that, the more you're self-aware of who you are and who you want to be, it makes it a lot more clear and easy to run the company. So I really appreciate you sharing all that today.
Yeah, thank you, Justin, for asking great questions. And as always, it's great to chat with you and have an opportunity to share with others what it is and how we're doing it.
Yeah, I can't wait to put this up and get the comments and hear what people think. So
Oh, sure, there'll be a lot.
it will be a lot. And that I'm looking forward to that. And the great thing about it is they'll get the opportunity to see it live
Yes.
in July. So can't wait for
Oh,
that.
as well, July 16th. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
there
and
we go.
we will live stream that. Yeah.
All right, Sasha, I appreciate it. On behalf of Sascha Deri, CEO and founder of bluShift Aerospace, you've been watching the latest episode of the Throttle Up podcast. Until next time.